It was. I never have
Hello.
heard you hit that note.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, it's very Disney.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Gospel Unplugged episode. My name is Pastor Ben Zieslik, and today I'm joined by an extra special guest.
Hi, everybody. Pastor Dixon.
Pastor Dixon, we're turning the corner from grace to hope. New series.
Yeah.
And today, the theme is Hope Creates Trust. We're reading from Mark chapter 5. Your namesake, I'm sure.
Yes.
And let's read it. You tell me what it's about.
Okay.
When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered around him, and he was by the sea. Then one of the leaders of the synagogue, named Jairus, came, and when he saw him, fell at Jesus' feet and pleaded with him repeatedly, "My daughter is at the point of death. Come, lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." So he went with him. While he was still speaking, some people came from the synagogue leader's house to say, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the synagogue leader, "Do not be afraid, only believe." He allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the synagogue leader's house, he saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. And when he had entered, he said to them, "Why do you make a commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. Then he put them all outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in where the child was. Taking her by the hand, he said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, get up." And immediately the girl stood up and began to walk about. She was 12 years of age. At this, they were overcome with amazement. Mark chapter 5, we get a whole bunch of these kind of healing episodes. There's actually one that is snuck in between some of the verses that we read today. But what are you drawn to?
I hate interruptions. And this is a story about interruptions. Jesus has just gotten into a context where he can deliver the next great sermon or series of teachings, Sermon on the Mount, Sermon on the Plain. Here he is when he teaches from the boat. Could be another episode like that. And right as he's about to get, "Truly I say to you," sorry, what's that? There's an interruption, and he's off on this side quest for this man and his daughter. And as you said, we've cut out some verses in the middle because it's kind of a whole other little narrative. But that's an interruption on the way to his interruption.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like interruptions. Pastor Callan doesn't seem to mind them. And you can make a pretty good argument that ministry is the work of honoring interruptions. And I think you could say that the Christian life is about making room for interruptions. I don't know that I want to talk about this, really. I don't think this is where the sermon is going as I'm working on it. But we've talked in the past about how one of the dominant theological convictions for young people at this church, and maybe people of any age, is something that technically we call providence, but this idea that everything happens for a reason. And I think this story actually gives us an alternative but compatible sort of way of thinking about life. It's not, this was not scripted, planned. Jesus did this so that he could be there for Jairus to do this. It's not that God does everything in this orchestrated way to make that domino tip into this one and then so on and so forth. But it is that God and the promises and faith are at work no matter where we go. Mm-hmm. If Jesus had stayed and spoken to that audience, God would have been at work there. Jesus follows this interruption, and God is at work in a remarkable way there. He's interrupted again. God's at work. Wherever you go, God can continue to be at work. Mm-hmm. But it's not a puppeteering thing. It's just like a constancy thing. God is always with you and at work in any situation.
I think that's a really lovely thing to call out. And I think you get the sense with this person, Jairus, that he has hope that by staying close to Jesus, God will be at work. Something will happen. And he gets brought, he's an interruption, but he gets brought and involved on this sort of journey. And I got to imagine he's probably like snapping his fingers, tapping his feet, like, come on, Jesus, like the time is ticking. Let's get there. And yet still doesn't give up hope because he is able to trust somehow in that Jesus will be able to do something.
Yeah. He wants to stay close to this person. The sermon sort of idea, the title that will be on the bulletin is Hope Creates Trust or something like that. Yeah. Sure, fine, I can go with that. But I think there's also like desperation here. And desperation drives hope. Like it's hope against hope. I'm clinging to a hope. This is a desperate man, a father. And so he will go to any lengths. I don't think this is what the sermon's going to be about, but I watched The Simpsons a lot as a kid, and my parents, for a long time, resisted that. And they thought, this is inappropriate. You can't do that, whatever. And then as you watch The Simpsons, especially as an adult, you see there's a lot to work with there. Mm-hmm. It's a loving family. They stay committed to each other. And there's even expressions of faith. They go to church regularly. You see the pastor in the show, whatever. And Homer prays a fair bit. But he always prays in the most desperate of circumstances. And I think that is a pretty good reflection of a lot of people's spiritual lives. You're just humming along, everything's going all right, and then you are interrupted by calamity or crisis or trauma of some kind. And that's when you go looking for Jesus like Jairus did. So there's a desperation here. And what I want to say about that, if I did include this in the sermon, you could imagine that Jesus, as many American Christians describe him, which is a moral teetotaler and a who's in, who's outer and all this stuff. You come to me now because you're desperate. Where were you when I was teaching? And kind of like bonk you on the head and send you away. But here, Jesus hears this man's desperation. He's got an audience here waiting to hear his words. And he doesn't hold it over that guy's head. He immediately, verse 24, and Jesus went with him. Mm-hmm. He hears that and he doesn't, what am I trying to say? Like make you feel guilty or sneer at you or like, oh, you're just showing up now. Right. I'm sorry. Immediately goes with him. And that's what mercy looks like in the person of Jesus.
It's a lovely call out. And I like,
for those keeping track at home, just to be clear, that is two lovely comments from Pastor Dixon in one Gospel Unplugged.
You're on a roll.
Let's get a ticker graphic.
Can we get a hat trick?
Yeah.
Can you get a hat trick?
Lovely comments. Dixon : 2.
The thing that I'm drawn to or I find really moving, compelling is the way in which Jesus enters into the death that has happened. Like all of the commotion, the weeping, all of that are just signs of death, that death has won. And the crowd, like, that he shows up is laughing at him. Like, you're too late. Like, what could you possibly do in the midst of this? And Jesus calls the little girl and she stands. And it's kind of, I think it's one of the ways in which Mark prefigures what Jesus will do in cross and resurrection. And
I think Jesus, it's so hard to think about, like, what is Jesus a wizard, or like, is he magic, or what is he? And this scene, I think, neatly dramatizes what Jesus really is, which is a whole other reality. Like, he's just a whole other reality with a different kind of thing vibrating around him and shining off of him. And he enters into this other very real reality. Mm-hmm. A girl has died. They're not dumb. In the ancient world, they knew what death was. Yep. And if it gets to the point where the community is gathered around and there's mourners there, she was dead. And Jesus is not dumb. I think he's not like, oh, she's not dead. Like, and he's not like just sort of being blindly encouraging, like, no, she's not dead. Don't worry, it'll be okay. And he's not doing a better diagnosis. He hasn't even seen her yet. He's just bringing his bizarre reality into this existing reality, saying, she's not dead, she's asleep. Because in Jesus' reality, death that seems so final and so ultimate is actually as temporary as a nap. I'm bringing it, I'm layering my reality on top of this. What you call death and say it's the end and it's forever, she's asleep. I'm going to go wake her up. And that's that transforms reality. He changes reality.
And I guess that's the kind of hope that we have to trust in.
Yeah, cling to.
All right. Well, what do you want people to be kicking around this week, thinking about?
Well, maybe just to continue with that last thought, what reality in your life seems so big and so real and so unchangeable, but maybe you've experienced or maybe you trust that through an encounter with Jesus, a different reality can take its place. It can be transformed by Jesus's reality. And then maybe think about this. Jairus shows up for his daughter's sake. He's not there for his own sake. And so maybe just think about for a moment a meditative practice. Who loves you so much, or who has loved you so much that they've gone to Jesus for you? They've prayed for you. And who do you love so much? Whom do you love? Sorry, Mom. Whom do you love so much that you remember them in your prayers? You're thinking about them. You're interceding for them. What's that community of prayer and care look like in your life?
Since we're talking about young people,
Wait, was that lovely?
We'll see. I'm thinking about it. It did remind me of something lovely that I wanted to share.
One for Pastor Cisick, probably.
Well, no, just like when I was a young person, when I was like the young adults that we were talking about earlier, when I had all the questions about faith and life and what it all meant, and I still do, but like I was really seriously questioning a lot of this stuff. I didn't know what prayer was or how it worked or any of those kinds of things. And I knew, though, that my grandma was always praying for me. And I couldn't articulate why that mattered, but it did. Yeah. And it was a source of strength and comfort. So it's lovely.
That's lovely.
It's lovely to invite people to reflect on that because it's powerful.
Yeah.
And it makes a difference.
We have praying people in our lives. We're lucky if and when we have praying people in our lives.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for all your loveliness. And we'll see you on Sunday.